I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying, but I wonder how many people, like Mr. Newsom, have been put out of business. I wonder how much damage has been done already. Well, and I'm wondering, what do we do?
Do you guys find it strange that the Frost Bank Tower has the face of an owl on it?
Why is that?
Well, they say that they made it in reference to the Old Testament deity, Moloch. These Canaanite and Babylonians would sacrifice their children to this thing.
Really?
We ride into town at the break of dawn, and we find all the fuckers who do you wrong. We'll round them up, and when the sun goes down, gather around and watch them hang in the middle of town. War is on, and you're gonna lose, and we're gonna make an example of you. We'll make you eat the seeds you sown. So run, motherfucker, the witch hunt's on. The shitters of the world are the ones who steal. They lie to you and cheat you and pillage and kill. They stab you in the back and they molest and rape, and we're here to set your fucking sick ass straight. So to hell with all who don't deserve a life. Death to the shitters of the world tonight.
As police continue the investigation into the murder of Bud and Melanie Billings, friends and relatives attended their wake Thursday night. The woman now at the center of the investigation, 47-year-old Pamela Long Wiggins, is out of jail this morning. She's posted bond and hired a lawyer. Police are sharing new details on her alleged role in the murder. According to police reports, guns used during the robbery were stashed in this minivan, which Wiggins owned. The safe that police believe the crew was after when they stormed the Billings home, police have found it, and here it is underneath the plastic bag. According to police reports, it was recovered in the backyard of a home that belongs to Wiggins.
The safe is being processed at this time. We have located several guns in various locations, one of which we believe is the murder weapon.
The sheriff heading up the investigation told ABC News there are still more shocking details to be revealed.
If I had determined to write a book, I'd write about this. If I was a scriptwriter, I'd write about this.
Wiggins is a complex figure. Court records show she may be married to more than one man. Her estranged husband told us he was still married to her, but ABC News found records of at least one other marriage that she may have entered into in December of last year.
Authorities are still trying to figure out who in this crew disabled the family's surveillance system. Police believe there are still a few more persons of interest out there.
For a federal judge himself to be sentenced for his role in a drug scandal involving a stripper and as a level-wise Steve Wiggins shows us. Some say Judge Camp should get a punishment just as tough as the ones he handed out from behind the bench.
Last October, after trying to buy drugs from an undercover FBI agent for himself and the stripper with him, the 67-year-old senior judge resigned before pleading guilty.
When this man gets off the bench, Northern parties off Metropolitan Avenue, using narcotics, purchasing narcotics, having weapons on it, using his government property to solicit for sex, having a good time.
Camp had a reputation for being tough on defendants, and many have been outraged at what is expected to be a slap on the wrist for a judge who often showed no mercy himself.
Owner of the chapter was very upset about him being able to retire before pleading guilty in order to keep his pension. If you work for any company, you don't normally get that right, and being a federal employee, those are taxpayers' dollars.
The National Action Network says it has been contacted by several defendants who faced Camp when he was a judge. The group is hoping that U.S. Attorney Sally Yates will continue to investigate whether Camp was fit to sit in judgment of others when in his off hours he was living a double life of criminal activity.
But I believe she had an open request to the public if anybody felt they had been wronged. So we would just like the opportunity to share with her what's come through our office.
Now, we tried without success tonight to get a comment from the U.S. Attorney's Office, but all sides will be in court tomorrow. Camp faces 15 days in jail, but his attorneys will ask for less than that. They'll ask the judge for probation and community service. Keith Whitney, 11 Live News Tonight.
This afternoon, a former federal judge faced a sitting federal judge, and former federal judge Jack Camp was sentenced to 30 days prison and more after a case that involved drugs, guns, and a stripper. Channel 2 investigative reporter Mark Winnie broke the story of Camp's arrest and is live in downtown.
You know, one prosecution document filed in this case sort of sums up the Camp conundrum. It says, as a veteran of the Vietnam War and a federal judge, there's no dispute that this defendant faithfully served his country. But it also says defendant's actions cast dark aspersions on the criminal justice system. Judge Camp, what would you like to say to those you once served?
Excuse me, gentlemen.
We don't have any comment, Judge Camp?
We don't have any comment.
30 days, I think, is a little lenient.
The Judge Camp that I know is completely different from the Judge Camp that one might understand from reading these documents.
Who knows how many times Jason Fowler would have seen then federal judge Jack Camp in action in federal court when he was Camp's law clerk. But this day... And you were here today in what capacity?
As Judge Camp's friend.
He says he flew down from Washington, D.C., where he practices law now. This time, Camp came to court for his own sentencing. Last year, Camp pled guilty to aiding and abetting the unlawful possession of controlled substances, unlawful possession of controlled substances, and conversion of government property. Documents indicate he gave a laptop to an exotic dancer, the same dancer with whom he used drugs. No one is to blame for what I did except for me, said Camp in court. And also, I'm so very sorry. I agree that he has disgraced his office, said sentencing judge Thomas Hogan, who handed down a sentence that included 30 days imprisonment, a year supervised release, a fine, and 400 hours community service.
It wasn't unexpected, but wasn't what I would have hoped for.
If you have had an injury for the last 11 years, that you were a sitting judge, how fit were you to pass judgment on people?
The defense cited a serious head injury in a 2000 bicycling accident, and a defense document suggested since 1999, Camp had been treated with standard antidepressant medications when his condition actually involved a mood cycling or bipolar disorder. All right, now a defense document says that a mood cycling disorder can have a manic phase. Quote, characteristic features of the manic phase are the excessive involvement in pleasurable activities that have a high potential for painful consequences, and so on. Some painful consequences today. Reporting live, Mark Winnie, Channel 2 Action News.
Tonight, GBI investigators are at the Northeast Georgia home of former state senator Nancy Schaefer. She and her husband were found dead there earlier today. Fox 5's George Franco joins us live from Habersham County with the story. George.
Deidre, I'm in the town of Turnerville, about 5 miles north of Clarksville in Habersham County, and just down the road there is the crime scene where the GBI and Habersham County Sheriff deputies are investigating the apparent murder-suicide of former state senator Nancy Schaefer and her husband Bruce. The GBI says they were called to the home of the Schaefers at the Orchard Private Golf Community just after 6 tonight. We're told family members found Nancy and Bruce Schaefer dead in their home. Investigators are still trying to determine exactly what happened, and so far have not indicated who killed whom. But they do say that both Nancy Schaefer and her husband Bruce were shot to death.
Preliminarily, it looks to be a murder-suicide. The GBI has 6 agents on the scene, 2 crime scene specialists. There will be a thorough investigation.
And the GBI is being thorough with this investigation. We are expecting to be debriefed on exactly what they have found in a little while. That is coming up, a news conference they're telling us. But some details about the folks. We're told that the Schaefers moved here to Habersham County after living for 35 years in Atlanta. They have 5 children, 4 sons and a daughter, and also clearly a lot of people who are mourning their loss this night. Reporting live tonight in Habersham County, I'm George Franco, Fox 5 News.
All right, thank you, George. The deaths of Mrs. Schaefer and her husband were announced this evening around 7:30 in the Georgia General Assembly. State Representative Rick Austin led the packed House chamber in a moment of silence for the couple. Mrs. Schaefer had a long career in local and state politics. She was a former Atlanta mayoral candidate. She also served 2 terms in the state Senate, representing the 50th District in Northeast Georgia. In 1986, she founded the nonprofit Family Concerns Incorporated. Mrs. Schaefer was an opponent of abortion and gay marriage and fought for public display of the 10 Commandments. And she was the Republican nominee for Lieutenant Governor in 1994. Stay with Fox 5 for continuing coverage of this developing story. We'll have the very latest on the Fox 5 News Weekend Edition starting at 6 a.m.
Our next speaker is Senator Nancy Schaefer. Nancy? Oh, there you are. Yes, Nancy is a longtime Eagle Forum member and leader. She has had an organization called Family Concerns, which was very effective all over the state of Georgia, and another one called Family Concerns Pregnancy Center. She has been in the Georgia State Senate for several terms and is a member of 6 Senate committees. Please welcome our good friend, Senator Nancy Schaefer.
Thank you, dear Phyllis, and thank you to all of you. I have served in the Georgia State Senate for 4 years. One of my greatest pleasures, other than my sonogram bill, was getting the resolution passed to stop the North American Union. However, for 4 years, I have been confronted with families struggling to remove their children from the clutches of Child Protective Services. I wrote a scathing report last year on the corruption in Child Protective Services, and an update and copies are out on the table. During the last session of the Georgia General Assembly, I introduced Senate Bill 415 relating to juvenile proceedings, and copies of that bill are attached to the report on the tables. The Bill 415 called for the time allotted for the Department of Human Resources to provide emergency care to a child without a court order to be reduced from 7 days to 72 hours. It required a court order to enter the residence of a parent or guardian to seize a child. It called for family court to be open to the public. Confidentiality and secrecy in family court protects the wrong people. It provided that immunity in the system shall not extend to the seizures of children that are found to be in violation, nor to the administration of medication to a child over the objection of the parent or custodian, and it provided the state from applying for obtaining, receiving, or accepting adoption incentive payments under the Federal Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997. The Department of Child Protective Services has become a protected empire built on taking children and separating families. This is not to say that there are not those children who do need to be removed from wretched situations and need protection. However, my report is concerned with the children and parents caught up in legal kidnapping. Having worked with probably 300 cases statewide and hundreds across the country, and in nearly every state, I am convinced there is no accountability in Child Protective Services. I have come to several conclusions. 2 or 3 are, 1, that poor parents, not always, but oftentimes, are targeted to lose their children because they do not have the wherewithal to hire an attorney and fight the system. That caseworkers and social workers are very often guilty of fraud. They withhold and destroy evidence. They fabricate evidence, and they seek to terminate parental rights unnecessarily. that the separation of families and the snatching of children is growing as the business grows because state and local governments have grown accustomed to having these taxpayer dollars to balance their ever-growing budgets. That the bureaucracy is huge. Look at who is getting paid. State employees, attorneys, court investigators, guardian ad litems, court personnel and judges. There are psychologists, therapists, psychiatrists, counselors, foster parents, adoptive parents, and on and on. All are looking to the children in state custody to provide job security. That the Adoption and the Safe Families Act, set in motion first in 1974 by Walter Mondale and later in 1997 by President Bill Clinton, offered cash bonuses to the states for every child they adopted out of foster care. In order to receive the adoption incentive bonuses, local child protective services would need more children. They must have merchandise that sells, and they must have plenty so the buyer can choose. Some counties often offer $4,000 to $6,000 bonus for each child adopted out to strangers, and an additional $2,000 for a special needs child. Employees work to keep the federal dollars flowing. But that is only the beginning figure in the formula in which each bonus is multiplied by the percentage that the state has managed to exceed its baseline adoption number. Therefore, states and local communities work hard to reach their goals for increased numbers of adoptions for children in foster care. As you can see, this program is offered from the very top and is run by Health and Human Resources. This is why victims in Child Protective Services get no help from their legislators. It explains why my bill, Senate 415, suffered such defeat in the Judicial Committee, and why I was cut off at every juncture, and why I was defeated myself last month for my re-election by another Republican. That tax dollars are being used to keep this gigantic system afloat. Many grandparents have called me to get custody of their grandparents before being lost in the system. Grandparents who lose their grandchildren to strangers have lost their own flesh and blood. The children lose their family heritage, and grandparents, and parents too, lose the connection of their heirs. And that the National Center on Child Abuse and Neglect in 1998 reported that 6 times more children died in foster care than in the general public, and that once removed to official safety, these children are far more likely to suffer abuse, including sexual molestation, than in the general population. Think what that number is today, 10 years later. Here are a couple of the recommendations on my list. Call for an independent audit of all state child protective services and for a federal congressional hearing on child protective services. Abolish the federal and state financial incentives that have turned child protective services into a business that separates families for money. I have witnessed such injustice and harm brought to so many families that I am not sure if reform of the system is even possible. The system cannot be trusted. It does not serve the people. It obliterates families and children simply because it has the power to do so. What I have said to you in these few minutes is that we must confront the fraud in Child Protective Services. Child Protective Services seizes children using the very system that is paid for by the taxpayer, who actually believes it is used to protect abused and neglected children. The bureaucracy of workers benefit financially by a system that converts children into cash while destroying their families and their lives. No child who emerges from the system can ever be sound or whole. Many disappear and never are ever heard from again. God will not stand for what is happening to our children and our families. His heart beats for these children. He will lift up the downtrodden. What is happening in America regarding child protective services is a criminal political phenomenon, and it must be brought to an end. Please join me in working to help set our children and our families free, To whom much is given, much is required. As you pray for this nation, pray for the upcoming election, and for our national financial crisis, please pray for our children and for our families. We all must press on and win this race for America.
I'm Ted L. Gunderson, a 27-year veteran of the FBI who retired in March of 1979. At the time of my retirement, I was the senior special agent in charge of the FBI Los Angeles Division with more than 700 personnel under my command and a budget of $22.5 million. Adults who were with the children, as to female adult and two male adults who were with the children, who are these kids? And the woman says, Child Protective Services, mind your own business. And that man, by the way, has disappeared. I also had a tip from an airline employee, a flight attendant out of Los Angeles, that a plane load of children was flown to Paris, France. Paul Benassi, my informant inside the Nebraska case, who was part of the child network, told me that some of these kids are auctioned off. He's attended 6 such auctions. As few as 6 and as many as 36 children were auctioned off at these various auctions. The children sell for up to $50,000 each, sometimes more. The ages are 2 to 21. The kids stand on a stage in their underwear with a number across with the string around their neck and a number on a cord, on a piece of cardboard, and the people in the audience bid on them, just like bidding on an automobile. This is going on right under our nose. I've given this to the FBI and demanded an investigation. I gave the latest complaint I filed is in writing as of November of this last year. I just keep pumping it over to them, keep giving it to them. And I have a U.S. Customs report that documents this.
On this edition of the Mad Cow Morning News Show, when a courageous U.S. attorney in San Diego's investigation began to focus in on who was draining away hundreds of millions of dollars from the U.S. defense budget, she paid the price. And not even the U.S. Senate could save her. From the silencing of Carol Lam, one plausible explanation why San Diego U.S. Attorney Carol Lam was fired is that she already knows too much. And this is a rapidly spreading scandal which could prove hard to contain. With the $1 trillion war going badly, some of America's top lawmakers, including Duncan Hunter, now running for president, and Randy Cunningham, now bunking in a federal prison, awarded tens of millions of dollars worth of defense contracts that did nothing to make this nation safer. Yet they couldn't find the money to pay for effective body armor for the troops. And it's cost hundreds of young Americans their lives. Is the major media talking about it? It's like we're living in a bad dream, and it's the 50s all over again.
Dream when you're feeling blue. Dream, that's the thing to do.
So what's it all mean? What is it they don't want us to know? Lam was getting close to massive corruption, even higher up on the food chain than Randy Cunningham. In the black budget, the secret CIA and defense contracts with virtually no oversight, her testimony reveals a hint of the fireworks to come in the Hookergate scandal, a secret, still sealed indictment.
Is it fair to say that even though there was a conviction in the Duke Cunningham case, there may also be other ongoing investigations that could stem from that case?
Before I left office on February 15th, the office did bring an indictment against Dusty Fogo and Brent Wilkes, as well as, indictments were brought in those two cases, and at that time our office announced that that the investigation was ongoing.
We have no idea why no one in the major media has picked up on this most important disclosure in Lam's testimony. What she says is, the office brought indictments against Dusty Fogo, Brent Wilkes, as well as, and then she stops herself. Whose name comes after as well as? Was her firing to prevent us from ever finding out? Carol Lamb's investigation was shut down when she got too close to massive CIA corruption. And it's happened before. A trial underway right now in an Arkansas courtroom has eerie parallels to the Lamb case and shows who suffers the deadly consequences when investigations into CIA corruption get shut down.
Testimony continues in the corruption trial of former Lone Oak Police Chief Jay Campbell.
The trial continues against the former Lone Oak Police Chief and his wife, Jay and Kelly Campbell. Top story, more allegations of drug use in the trial of the former Lone Oak Police Chief, his wife, and a bail bondsman.
The trial against the former Lone Oak Police Chief and his wife continues. The two are charged with being part of a continuing criminal organization seeking drugs, sex, and money.
Meet Jay Campbell, an Arkansas police chief at the center of a sweeping corruption trial, charged with running a sheriff's office as a continuing criminal enterprise. How does the trial of an alleged corrupt Southern sheriff throw light on the firing of the U.S. attorney in San Diego? Because Jay Campbell was the beneficiary of a CIA-engineered cover-up 20 years ago, which also included the firing of a courageous prosecuting attorney, just like Carol Lamb. 20 years ago, Jay Campbell, then a narcotics investigator for the Arkansas State Police, was under suspicion in the murder of two high school boys who stumbled onto a drug drop he was allegedly protecting for an arms and cocaine trafficking operation in Arkansas being run by the CIA to support the Nicaraguan Contras. And that's when this woman, Jean Duffy, a prosecutor heading a federally funded drug task force looking into the boys' murders, lost her job.
My opinion has been involved is a CIA, perhaps a CIA rogue operation conducted by CIA operatives to smuggle drugs into the United States from South America, specifically using Barry Seal's drug smuggling operation in Mena.
This is at the heart of what came to be known as the Iran-Contra scandal. A number of years ago, we did a documentary about it. Despite widespread suspicion in the small town outside Little Rock where the murders occurred, Campbell, a longtime close friend of politically well-connected and convicted cocaine distributor Dan Lassiter, was never investigated for the murders. Duffy got death threats. She even had to leave the state in fear for her life. Compared with Jean Duffy, Carol Lamb got off easy. But nobody in the major media is talking about the sinister implications of the Campbell scandal either. Instead, perhaps understandably, they're focused on one of his co-defendants. The sheriff's wife liked to have sex with the prisoners.
Witnesses testified today on Kelly Campbell's interactions with prisoners.
The Arkansas Department of Corrections inmate Shane Scott was on the stand again today. He has testified he and Kelly Campbell had a sexual relationship. Today, Scott said that Jay Campbell was okay with that. Scott also testified that Kelly told him she and Jay were swingers and that the police chief wanted a threesome with them. He claimed Kelly also told him Jay Campbell was fine with her having an affair as long as he had access to illegal drugs. Inmate Tim Ainsworth testified he had sexual relations with Kelly Campbell initiated by her. He testified she even gave him these pictures of herself posing suggestively. Ainsworth claims he had sex with her 5 times, twice in an alley behind the Lone Oak jail, once in her truck, once in the police chief's office, and once in Jay and Kelly Campbell's bedroom. Andrew Baker testified he took pictures of the police chief's wife with another prisoner, showing her in his arms, kissing him, and posing together. Inmate Baker didn't go into specifics about the relationship, but did say life was good as a prisoner in Lone Oak.
Sheriff Campbell's wife's fondness for inmates reveals nothing about the firing of Carol Lamb, and we freely admit to including it for purely gratuitous purposes. But it does illustrate the amazingly above-the-law attitude of the sheriff and those around him. Campbell is even accused of soliciting criminals to sell crack.
2 former convicted drug dealers took the stand, one testifying that he sold drugs to Kelly, the other dealer saying he sold crack for Jay.
The prosecution also called former drug dealer 26-year-old Dexter Washington. Under oath, Washington recalls a former meeting with Jay Campbell, testifying that Campbell allegedly wanted Washington to sell crack for him. At the alleged meeting, Washington says Campbell handed him a package containing crack, and Campbell said he wanted $2,000 for it. The remaining money collected, according to Washington, would be his to keep. Washington says the second time he decided to keep the money because he was behind on rent. Then, according to Washington, he was picked up by 2 Lonoke City policemen for having no driver's license.
Of course, when the county sheriff controls the drug trade, it gives him all kinds of leverage. But here's the truly amazing thing. This is the other man suspected of being involved, along with Campbell, in the Boys on the Tracks murders 20 years ago. Dan Harmon was the local prosecuting attorney at the time. He was later convicted of running his office as a continuing criminal enterprise, too, and also of trafficking narcotics.
Accused of racketeering and drug offenses is a free man today. Harmon was released from federal custody yesterday while he awaits his trial. Harmon maintains his innocence and says he is a victim of government harassment.
20 years later, his fellow suspect, Sheriff Campbell, is on trial for the same thing. Is this just a coincidence? Or does this suggest that both men worked for a shadowy, unnamed organization that, among other things, traffics in narcotics? And so we come to the big question that isn't being asked anywhere else. Randy Cunningham, Brent Wilkes, Dusty Fogel, Mitchell Wade, all conspired to defraud the U.S. government of tens of millions of dollars, but were they merely independent contractors out to satisfy their own selfish greed? Or were they working for the same shadowy organization which appears to employ corrupt law enforcement officials in Arkansas, and perhaps many other places as well?
Across the globe and we're standing on the ground, screaming across the world.
Yeah. O-O-J. 5'7", 5'9" shit. I'm the brains out the clique, so I got niggas that shoot to kill. So they could be a problem going against my squadron. And we getting guap, always writing something foreign. So you know the deal if we riding in that Coupe de Ville. They put in that arm work, AK sounding like the pyro at a concert. And blicky like Pinky, this shit gonna be over. Cause these niggas killing me like Melanie Fiona. I put the weight of my clique on my shoulders. You depend on niggas, you love being a soldier. Why y'all niggas rolling on a beam like Folgers? Old spit raw like Coke without the soda. Since a juvenile, and I ain't from the know ya. I burnt more bread than a toaster. Gun out the holster when the beef approach ya. A nigga put your brains on the wall like a poster. Closure. Got the shit, bring it to you where you post up. As far as your bars, y'all need to get your flows up. My squad be in cars, Ferrari Testarossas. OG niggas, y'all know speed niggas. Hoes see you moving slow, codeine niggas. How you making movies with no scene niggas? The Rock is my republic, no jeans niggas. Big cladic, y'all addicts, dope fiend niggas. These niggas frauds. We don't speak cause you tweak off handlebars. Nope. And I don't see nobody fucking with my squad. Nah. We keep it real so nigga chill cause we go hard. Yeah, we go hard. These niggas frauds. We don't speak cause you tweak off handlebars. And I don't see nobody fucking with my squad. We keep it real so nigga chill cause we go hard. We go hard. Yeah, we go hard.
Let's go. Black Mac in my backpack. Black bag for your bitch ass. Big bags of that green grass. You trash, new smack. How you gon' last in my game with some cash on your brain? Struggle music, huh? This what you call it. Did the smoke of music? We about to profit. Wrap your arms about the socket like a low. Let's get it poppin'. Be a look, you know we rockin'. So fucking with me is not a fucking option. Get it though. You pathetic dog. I said it though. We gon' get it, yo. SK, AK, Black 9, Tech 9, Red Line on your spine. Share to you. You coward who? Looking miserable. We don't play. They gonna say what they did to you was pitiful. Condition looking critical. All up in the hospital. Gotta prove this nigga news is a lame rapper. Use a pure actor. Fake trapper representer in the end of you will see. Her career was disappeared.
We don't speak cause you tweak off handlebars. Nope. And I don't see nobody fucking with my squad. Nah. We keep it real so nigga chill cause we go hard. Yeah, we go hard. These niggas frauds. We don't speak cause you tweak off handlebars. And I don't see nobody fucking with my squad. Never. We keep it real so nigga chill cause we go hard. Yeah, we go hard.
And it's too late to apologize. It's too late. I said it's too late to apologize. It's too late. You've paid your foolish tax, read the acts, and they just won't do. Wanna make it clear we believe this much is true. All men were created with certain.
You can tell me individual can't submit evidence in a juvenile.
The judge already told you in court that he's not going to look at your evidence. You don't know how else you can try to file it.
Okay, well that seems to be like illegal or something because I thought the Constitution guaranteed your right to, for a trial and due process.
I don't know what your case is about,
and I want you to tell us what you knew about this little runaway episode after in 93.
Okay, she met a Pakistani guy named Shahid Siddiqui. She sent me a picture, all dressed up in Pakistani clothes, and of course I was a little upset because I don't trust them. I was worried about her marrying him, going over there and having kids, and maybe they'd behead her and keep my grandkids. This is her and Shahid Siddiqui. He was one of the fix-it men for the mastermind of 911.
Hold it. A picture of 911 mastermind fix-it man?
This is her and Shahid Siddiqui. He was one of the fix-it men for the mastermind of 911. And they had a guy hit out. And his name was Yusef. And he never left the apartment.
Did she say Yusef? Yep, Yusef. This guy right here. I witnessed him be hit out right after the 93 bombing. And I also witnessed this guy, Sheikh Muhammad, a.k.a. Mr. Religious, come visit his nephew, Yusef, twice while he was being hid out after the 93 bombing before they got him to Pakistan. I also witnessed him go visit this guy. I distinctly remember this guy because of the evil eye. He kept giving it to me because I was wanting to go ice skating.
He met a martyr. She didn't know what a martyr was, and she'd met this guy, Mr. Religion. They went to Texas, New Orleans, and this Mr. Religion would always come around. And one day, she had a little kitty cat that she loved, and he butchered her kitty cat for some reason.
One of them butchered a kitty cat, and she told you she went to school. And they found out about her telling the counselor, and that packed her up, and all of a sudden, it was probably about, 4 o'clock in the morning or something, real late at night. I can't remember exactly, but it was at night. Pouring down rain, all these Middle Easterns are there with your daughter.
Pull up in my yard with my daughter, all her stuff, and just throwed it on the front porch with turbans on their head and all that crazy stuff. And
it's not funny, but it's serious.
They were gone.
Serious.
Well, I don't like them, but and they were gone.
And they were gone. Never heard from again until 911. If you want to know why no one's heard of me till now, stay tuned to part 2, because boy, is this a doozy of a story. Dump her out on your front porch. A couple of days she runs away again. And then a few weeks later you hear that she is with
A Mexican.
an illegal Mexican.
An illegal Mexican. She was always running from something, but she never realized what she was running to. And he wound up being a smuggler, and he smuggled to a juvenile judge in Georgia that was a real estate lawyer for a builder. And they were smuggling in children and all kind of things, and a 10-year-old became pregnant by a 29-year-old illegal immigrant. So by this time, my daughter was getting tired of being beat up because he had done beat her till her spleen ruptured. He had given her a nerve toxin, and she is a incomplete quadriplegic. It took her 12 years to learn to walk with prosthetics. And she has all kind of nerve problems. And when she started trying to talk and tell about the 10-year-old, well, the juvenile judge, all his family is in CPS, so they opened up a case on her. And this is the husband, that's the Mexican, and he is wanted for child rape, beating my daughter till her spleen ruptured, bit her all over, blacked her eyes, paralyzed her, and the judge says, no abuse noted. So they start trying to take her children. And then, all of a sudden, he stiffs her husband $100,000, so he grabs them and he runs to Mexico with them. He was bad about stealing her kids and running with them, knowing that she would come after her 2 children. She has 2 boys. Well, she finally got the first one away, the oldest one, and she got to San Diego and left him at a Catholic church with some nuns and went back in with her prosthetics and made a deal and got the youngest son out and got to San Diego, where she asked CPS for help. And she needed CPS and APS because she needed adult protective services. She was running from Mexican mafia. Very bad big boys.
So you say your daughter needs APS. So that means your daughter's special needs. Okay, so let's elaborate on what those special needs are.
Well, the special needs are that she has post-traumatic stress from being beat, drugged, tried to be murdered, poisoned, and the oldest boy had been abused, so they needed help. But instead of helping, they take her boys, put them in a diagnostic center, start drugging them up because they're telling the same story, and throw my daughter right into the streets of San Diego. And we have no family there. They're 3,000 miles away. So Niecy Brown, she calls me, and she wants me to come out there. And of course, they're fixing to do the biopsy on me.
Hold on a minute. Okay, let's back up. Okay, so why did San Diego take her kids? I mean, if she's asking for help and she's telling this. Okay, they did an investigation, right? And this Dan Camp, this real estate lawyer, who's a real estate lawyer and a juvenile judge, supposedly part-time, but he's the only judge in that county, which is all legal as all get out by itself. And so he had a conflict of interest being on the case in the beginning because her husband supplying them with laborers. And the fact, just that alone, but the fact that they're smuggled in and they're illegal makes it even more of a conflict of interest. But he tells them, the investigators in San Diego, a different side of the story. In fact, he sends a decree, which is the court papers you read in the first part of this video that you're in, where it says that she was delusional about being born in the United States, nobody's mean to her, she ain't, everything is a delusion. Okay, but there's documentation. In fact, he's wanted, right, on a website for child rape. And inside the court papers, it even acknowledges that the FBI acknowledged that he was a human smuggler, and that
nationwide search for an adorable 4-year-old girl believed to be on the run with her mom and her mom's boyfriend, who just happens to be a Tier 3 sex offender, the most serious kind of sex offender. This fugitive's past victims were just 10 and 11 years old. What on earth is wrong with these moms who let these cretins into their daughters' lives? Are they nuts? Tonight we learn the frightening story gets even more twisted. Little Haley Jonathan's uncle is a sex offender himself. That ex-con uncle and the little girl's own dad allegedly helped this sex offender boyfriend escape from a halfway house. This is one sicko family tree. Then that boyfriend, Robbie Potter, took the woman and the young child named Haley with him on what is turning into a nationwide game of Find the Fugitive. The child's father, James Jonathan, and the ex-con uncle, Kyle Watson, were arrested and charged with complicity to escape. This is mind-boggling. In what crazy, mixed-up world does a father and an uncle help a pedophile escape from a halfway house to then take off with their precious 4-year-old girl and her mom?
About her being delusional, right?
Yes. One of the delusions is that her husband poisoned her, and he did. She's partial quadriplegic.
That's from a nerve toxin.
From a nerve toxin. It took her 12 years to get better where she can walk with the AFOs, and she still has trouble getting around. And when the oldest son, which was 10 at the time, started telling about his father, he's in the Mexican Mafia, all the things that he had done, machine guns that he had shot and all that, well, they started drugging him up, saying he was delusional. They said my daughter was delusional. And they're not delusional. In fact, in the report, it says, the summary, comments, and recommendations, my impressions of Celeste are that she is suffering from delusional disorder. There are many contradictions in the stories that she tells. One of the most obvious occurred after her story about being born in the U.S. and being raised by people other than Hispanics. And I am not Hispanic. I raised her. She was born in the U.S. As a matter of fact, this is her birth certificate, born in Georgia. This is my birth certificate, born in Alabama. And she is my daughter.
So you've read these court papers, haven't you?
All 2,000 of them.
And so basically her delusions are that she was born in the United States, raised by non-Hispanic.
I guess you're right, and there's nothing I would say to you this time. You told me just what I had to live for, and there's no flight in my heart. I have a fucking show it's alright, it's alright, if I need more than you're right. I guess you're right, if I wake up in your mind. I guess you're right, I guess you're smart.
Oh, she's
'cause I'm taking by your heart.
about third grade.
I could miss
Well, you know what? I remember that show.
for the hours it takes to meet, and I'm speaking like I'm so if I need more than you're right. I guess you're right, if I wake up in your mind. I guess you're right, if I sink into your sleep and naked teeth. I guess you're right, if I never let you go. I know you're so right. I guess you're right, if I wake up in your mind. I guess you're right, can I crawl around your bones? Would that be right, if I never let you go? There you are, so right.
Yeah, it looks like the United States.
Take it out.
Real country does it. Sure don't. It's in the back, right down the road here. Oh, here's a picture of Mama in the carnival. Yeah, remember they saying that? Yeah. That was a delusion. That's a picture of her and all her carny buddies.
That's
her
right.
carny friends.
That's who it is. That's who it is.
There's one of her in
And that's Freda there with her.
Yeah. Freda's her sister, my mama's sister.
Mm-hmm.
That's him at a booth at a carnival.
Mm-hmm. Sure is.
Wow. Mama, look, I thought I had a picture of Pop Tony.